Man, it's been a journey, it's been a journey, it's been a journey. Good afternoon, Harvard Graduate School of Education, class of 2025. Let's take a moment of silence for all of the lives lost and all of the lives gained during this journey we've been on this past 10 months. Thank you. Congratulations to everyone who has made it to this day, whether you glided here or crawled. I would be remiss not to acknowledge that this has been a really tough time for many of us, and to know that as we share this space together to celebrate, to exhale, and to witness each other, it's a gracious moment that deserves nothing but jubilation. Good afternoon, Dean Lasso, faculty, staff, families, and my fellow graduates, class of 2025. When we first applied to HGSE, each one of us wrote a personal statement. And that story was really about who we were, what we believed in, and what we thought was bringing us to the edge of this opportunity. Mine personally began with a deep belief that education was more than a pathway out. It was a way back. Back to community, back to purpose, and back to self. I wrote about growing up without generational wealth, but with generational wisdom. And I dreamed of Harvard, not as a destination, but as a doorway, to build a future where students who look like me don't just survive the system, they redefine it. I was thinking about the students who are brilliant but silenced, the ones who don't have access, the ones who don't have freedom to express, and the ones who are never handed the microphone to speak on the changes that they want to see in this world. Similar to the way I'm doing right now as I honor and grace this stage in this moment. I wanted to be a conduit, a voice for the voiceless, an advocate for those who've been pushed to the margins. A few months before I even had the idea of applying to HGSE, in August of 2023, I discovered that my grandfather had written his own personal statement, not in words, but through action. He was one of 13 plaintiffs in the landmark Supreme Court case, Griggs versus Duke Power Company. And that case wasn't just about challenging the company, it exposed the system. In the 1950s, Duke Power Dan River Steam Station in Eden, North Carolina, restricted black employees to his labor department, where the highest paying job earned less than the lowest paying in any other position in any other department. Then in 1955, they added a requirement, a high school diploma, where most black workers had systematically been denied. On July 2nd, 1965, the day the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was taken into effect, they added two tests, the Bennett Mechanical Comprehension Test and the Wonderlic Cognitive Ability Test. These so-called objective measures made white applicants nearly 10 times more likely to advance to a different position in another department over the black ones. But my grandfather and others pushed back, and the Supreme Court agreed. They ruled that acts generally lawful may become unlawful when done to accomplish an unlawful end. Griggs established the legal precedent of disparate impact, a doctrine first recognized in March 1971 that continues to shape employment to this day. And to be honest, that discovery lit up my world. It made my purpose undeniable. It clarified why advocating for an inclusive, accessible education system is not just my passion, it's my inheritance. It reminded me that the fight for justice runs through my bloodline, that my presence in this space is not accidental, it's ancestral. And it deepened my drive. Thank you. It deepened my drive to understanding that when I am doing this to lever these systemic transformation, it's not just incremental change. So when I learned about this, something in me locked in. The fight for justice was no longer abstract. I realized that education is one of the very few fields where advocacy, policy, and personal transformation still converge. This is my lane. This is my fight. And I've been chosen to represent. And I do so with pride, with pressure, and with purpose. I remember sitting in front of my laptop, staring at the blinking cursor, wondering if my story, my truth, was enough. Was it worth telling? I wrote that statement with hope, yes, but also with fire. I wanted to find a place where my questions weren't too loud, where my ambition wasn't too big, and where my love for my people wasn't seen as political, but necessary. That fire didn't start with Hugsy. It's been burning. The difference now, it's been fueled, fanned with something bigger, brighter, by being surrounded by such greatness. Because iron sharpens iron. And this year, I've been sharpened by peers who forged critical theory into pedagogical poetry, who brought brilliance into every breakout room, and who held me accountable and lifted me higher. That flame now burns fiercely with the weight of responsibility and the glow of vision. And I wasn't alone. One of you told me I wrote my personal statement at 2 a.m. in my apartment floor crying because I was tired of being told that the way I loved kids, the way I taught wasn't academic enough. And one of you said, I wrote about my grandfather. He couldn't read or write, but he taught me everything I needed to know about resilience. And I applied to Hugsy for him. Some of us wrote about leaving jobs, crossing borders, and surviving pandemics and grief, navigating systems that truly just weren't built for us, but still showing up, still believing that education can be liberation. And then we got here, to Harvard, where, let's be honest, sometimes it felt like we were trying to squeeze our full, complicated lives into a 500-word Canvas post, or where imposter syndrome wasn't a theory, it was just a regular Tuesday. But it's also where we met each other, and where we sat in circles and we named our fears, where we unlearned and relearned, and through it all was challenged deeply by the academic rigor this place demanded. In our core courses, we rooted ourselves in the science of how people learn, paired with the framework of universal design for learning, to create practices that could reach the masses, young and old. Those foundational classes we took in August laid the groundwork for leading change through an evidence-based lens, and they really gave us not just content, but context. You know, a sharper understanding of how theory truly fuels transformation. The perspectives and skills we gained weren't abstract, they were tools. Tools we now carry forward to dismantle inequity and design for belonging, especially for those most impacted by the very systems of discrimination that we study here. Where we dreamed together, fought together, and laughed way too hard in Gutman and held each other when it got heavy. Our Hugsy experience was never confined to classrooms. It was in the late night conversations in dorm lounges, in campus hallways. It was in the stadium seats of Fenway, the museums of Seaport, and the cabin getaways in Lenox, where theory met testimony and where policy met people. It was being shaped by professors who dared us to reimagine and peers who challenged us to go deeper. It was walking through Harvard Yard with the weight of history on our backs and the future in our hands. And somewhere in the middle of it all, during a course at Hugsy, I saw an image of Lewis Latimer. a name I hadn't heard nearly enough growing up. Born right here in Massachusetts, Latimer was most remembered for creating the carbon filament that made Thomas Edison's light bulb practical and long-lasting. Without his innovation, the light as we know it would not glow today. And I carry that image with me, not just as a black man in STEM history, but as a symbol. Because Hugsy may have provided the framework, the bulb, but we, the students, are the carbon filament. We are the illumination. And just like Latimer made light sustainable, we can make knowledge transformative. The spark within us was already there. Hugsy didn't give us that, but what this place did do was connect us to an electric current of ideas, people, and purpose, powerful enough to invoke the next great phenomenon. May we each become our own light bulb, not just conductors of brilliance, but catalysts of change, grounded in truth, charged with vision, and divinely positioned to illuminate a new path forward in whatever form that may take. Because this is where our personal statements become a collective story. A story of future school leaders, policy changers, curriculum designers, youth organizers, and data reimaginers, who don't just want to close gaps, but open new doors, who don't just want to fix education, but transform the systems that uphold the status quo. Because we are not just a part of this education system. We are a part of a larger movement, one that challenges what is possible in a world that too often tells us to settle for what is. And now, we leave this place in a moment of uncertainty, in a world where books are being banned faster than they're being read, where diversity is being politicized, and where educators are being told to stay in their lane, to teach neutrality when our communities need truth. The legacy of that case, of my grandfather's fight, is not just history. It is a prophecy. Because today we are seeing the exact same tactics return, dressed in new clothes. Policies that seem neutral but disproportionately punish marginalized communities. Tests of worthiness, standards not designed for equity but exclusion. It has been 2 months since Mahmoud Khalil, a student activist at Columbia University, was detained in an immigration facility in Louisiana. He wrote a letter welcoming his newborn son. In it, he asked, why do faceless politicians have the power to strip human beings of their divine moments? That question does not just haunt, it exposes. It reminds us that the violence we fight is embedded in the systems that surround us, systems designed to surveil, to silence, and to discipline anyone who dares to speak truth institutions would rather suppress. We must fight for a future where no one is forced to write their joy through the bars of a cell, where no one's divine moments are denied by design. That letter was not just for his son, it was for all of us. And our task now is not to just remember it, but to respond. There is an overreach, and not just of government, but of fear. And in moments like this, the questions become, will we fold or will we rise? I say we rise. We didn't come to Hugsy to blend in. We came to learn to change the world. And sometimes that change starts by reminding folks, don't underestimate my brain. And that's dumb. A little play on words, but a big reminder. We are not just thinkers. We are builders, innovators, disruptors, dreamers with degrees. We know that education is not neutral. It is political. And it is personal, and it is powerful. This story includes the friend who helped you with your stats homework, the one who said you got this before your cohort presentation, and the one who just invited you over for dinner when you just didn't want to eat alone. Because yes, Harvard did give us classes, but we gave each other community. And that's what I want to leave us with today. A charge, but also a truth. Our stories are not finished. The personal statement was the beginning, not the whole book. From here, we keep writing, not just for ourselves, but for the students, the families, the movements waiting on our pages. So let's tell better stories, louder, prouder, and more honest. Let's write chapters filled with joy, with justice, and imagination, and let's write them together. Congratulations, class of 2025. We are the authors now.